pollster and communication strategist Frank Luntz just held a focus group. Watch this.
How many of you were supporting Joe Biden 14 days ago? Raise your hands. None of you. How many of you, if the election were held today, would vote for the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris?
I would.
Okay, that's all of you.
None of you to all of you. And Frank Luntz is with us now. Frank, so thank you so much for being with us. Let me just ask you, if the election were held today, who would win?
She would win. And I want to emphasize, it's not just about momentum. And I thought your commentary just before this was dead on. It's also about passion. It's about commitment. And Harris voters are even more eager to vote for her than Donald Trump voters are to him. We've not seen that in the entire campaign. Call that intensity. And her campaign is generating the intensity. And another key component is exactly why this is happening. She's talking and emphasizing her persona, her attributes, her character traits. And that's where Donald Trump has been commenting. And the fact is, the American people do not want to hear the same kind of negativity, the same kind of attacks that he's been delivering. His strength is on issues, most particularly the two issues that matter most, inflation and immigration. But instead of speaking about those two issues and talking about the failures of the Biden administration, he's been making these personal attacks, and it's frankly turning the voters off that he needs to reach. Now, I want to emphasize one more thing.
Hang on, Frank. I want to actually break down some of the things you just said there into pieces. And before we get that, though, again, if the election were held today, you say that Harris would win. If the election were held 4 weeks ago, who would win? Who would have won?
Donald Trump would have won, and I was very careful when I said it. And the reason why, threefold. Number one, he's winning those three states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Number two, he had the intensity, so he'd have done actually 1% better than his polling showed. And number three, frankly, he was on the issues that people cared about.
Let's talk about the Harris side for a second, because you talk about the excitement and enthusiasm. One of the things that she and her running mate are leaning into is this idea of joy. How does joy rate in your focus groups? Is there anything you can see where that's having an impact?
It's not joy. It's the absence of meanness. And I want to be specific about this. It's not that she's so energetic and so, which is part of it. The people in the focus groups appreciate that. It's that they've stopped appreciating the same kind of attacks again and again, year after year, that Donald Trump delivers. Frankly, and now let me upset everyone here, it's not that she's winning this campaign, it's that Donald Trump is losing the campaign. And I'm starting to wonder, how does he not see this? How does he not see the polling decline that he's had? How did he not read and understand that people were fed up with a 93-minute convention speech that was really great for the first 30 minutes and got really awful at the end? We are a different people than we were when he was first elected. We are a different country in 2024 than we were in 2016. And I don't think that he understands it. Last point, I don't think it's his campaign, because I see the stuff that they put out. I think it's actually the candidate that's responsible for this.
Look, at all the reporting over the last 3 days has seemed to indicate that the leaks, the likes of which we've seen, generally speaking, are to send the candidate a message. You've got to see this. You've got to see the problem you're in. Ezra Klein, this wasn't an article, this was a column in the New York Times today. He's an opinion writer, but he writes, quote, Biden's communication strategy was designed to make Trump bigger. Harris's strategy is to make him smaller. And then Klein continues, the result is that Trump is starved for the resource he craves most, attention. And as is often the case when he loses control of the headlines, he's making loonier in more self-destructive arguments. How do you feel about that?
I think I never thought I would say this, because Ezra and I have disagreed on a lot. I think he's dead on. But let's talk about the impact on democracy in the end. The key moment here is going to be the debates when Harris and Trump stand side by side and give the alternative points of view. I still think he has a reasonable chance of winning, because in the end, the issue agenda favors him, but not if you're so angry that you've stopped reflecting the people you're trying to reach.
Frank Luntz, great to speak with you this morning. Thanks so much for your time, as always.
CNN's Jeff Zeleny leads us off this hour. He's joining us now. So, Jeff, for Harris and any campaign, really, the mission number one is create the momentum and then keep the momentum. For the Harris campaign, what does that mean? What does that look like now?
Well, Kate, it simply is keeping the momentum alive that they've had for about 3 weeks or so. You saw that rollout last week of the vice presidential running mate. That is, a week that happens only once in a campaign. Now, of course, it's back to some of the basics, actually saying what she would do as president. So we are going to look for that later this week. But look, this momentum is something that clearly, as you said, has gotten under the former president's skin. I was at that Detroit rally where he was talking about there was no crowd. There was a crowd, a very large crowd. Thousands of people were streaming out and streaming in. But look, what the Harris campaign is trying to do is not respond to every one of these sort of outrageous claims from their rival and really try and focus their base and keep their base energized and excited. The vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, he's out fundraising all week long. Vice President Harris is back here in Washington after her swing last week. They simply are trying to keep their base energized, of course, leading into the Democratic convention next week. But it is about policies and proposals that we are expect to hear later this week, because she really has not answered questions at all or say why, in fact, she is running for president or what she wants to do as president in her first term of a Harris administration. So, of course, they have to put some more meat on those bones, Kate.
Well, let's talk about the meat on the bones. Republicans are attacking Harris. Sure. We heard that from J.D. Vance. I heard it from surrogates who were on the show just this morning that Kamala Harris is not rolling out enough policy. What is the Harris campaign saying about that?
Well, look, it is very early in her candidacy, so we are starting to see more. In fact, we heard of some policy proposals late last week. She was talking about the border bill. She said if she is president, she would sign into law the border bill that was going through Congress, promoted by Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, and a bipartisan group that was derailed in Congress by the former president. He told Republicans to stop negotiating on this, so she said she would sign that into law. So that's one very serious piece of policy. There's not been a bipartisan immigration bill discussed for a couple decades here successfully in Washington. So that is one. She also was following the former president's lead when she was in Nevada over the weekend, talking about the taxes for tips on workers, for servers and things. So that is something else that he accused her of following his lead. And she was, but she also said she would use that to pass a minimum wage bill as well. So we're seeing some of these lines being drawn in, but they are promising a more economic policy later this week, perhaps Wednesday or Thursday, to fill in some of these gaps. But again, she is trying to keep this momentum alive going into the convention next week. And then we're almost at the end of August. So yes, still 85 days to go. There's no doubt this is going to be, she believes that they're still underdogs, but certainly not what they were a month ago, Kate.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Jeff. Thank you so much.